Okay, it's 6:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order, verify compliance with open meetings law, notification, and adopt the agenda. If you all stand and do the pledge of the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is comments from the audience for policy 0167.3. This is the only time public participation is permitted. Comments are limited to current agenda items. Anyone having a legitimate interest in an agenda item may participate. Attendees must register their intention to speak upon their arrival at the meeting. Participants are to preface their comments by announcing their name and address and group affiliation when appropriate. Comments are limited to 3 minutes unless extended by the board president, and no participant may speak more than once on the same topic. Comments are to be directed to the board. No person may address or question board members individually. We have one person, Brian Van Buren. Go ahead. And you reference 6B as the agenda item you'd like to speak on.
Yeah, good evening, board. The specific topic would be the values that was mentioned last week on the agenda, and specifically the concept of belongingness. I represent WAC, and here to talk about the values. Clearly, belongingness centers, the value of belongingness centers on, or is partnered up with communication. And clearly here in classroom, home, church, whatever, both those go together, where if you belong, there's opportunity for communication, the chance to communicate in a two-way street. The reason I'm here tonight is that WAP believes that there was a piece that was lacking as far as communication and belongingness last year, as far as, I guess, some red tape. Out of the blue, just myself walking in the hallways, I heard of a document where teachers had an opportunity to get a raise. I'm like, no, that doesn't happen because we have CPI and we have micro-credentials. But there was. And there was a document. Can I bring this to you, Mr. Cagle?
Actually, no. Okay. You can't address us directly.
All right.
And this is about the values, right?
Yeah, values, right. So, real quick, thank you very much. The value of communication, we learned of a process in which you could get a raise. And we had not heard about that. And as WAC, we met and we were quite concerned about this piece because, we felt that we, bargaining in good faith, the value of, it's either CPI or micro-credentials. And there was another piece. And this was the key point that membership stated in the district.
Okay, so I'm going to have to stop you because you're going back to the compensation model. You're not actually talking about values. So this is about the values as last week. Okay. We're done with the compensation model.
All right, thank you. We would just like to move forward with the value of belongingness and that there is communication towards documents in regards to the district. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, item 4, gifts, donations, recognition, student and staff spotlight. Do we have anything? No? Okay, consent agenda. 5A is approval of August vouchers and vouchers payable. 5B is approval of July 23rd and August 13th, 2018 school board minutes. 5C is approval of parent-paid busing. 5D is approval of seclusion and restraint report. And 5E is approval of personnel recommendations. Would anyone like to remove any items?
C and D.
C and D. Would anyone else? Then I'll take a motion to approve items A, B, and E.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And Quinn, question on C?
Yeah, so Mike, I take it that it's going down about $100 to $507.49?
Yep.
Okay. And is there a reason?
Yep, so the overall transportation costs were lower, ridership was higher. It's the formula that DPI gives us. We included 2 more ridership counts this past year, which gave us a more accurate number, raised ridership as we got a more accurate number. So those 2 factors together caused the transportation rate to decrease for our parents.
So when we approve that, this number will go into 2018,
18-19, correct.
All right, thank you.
And then D?
Yeah, D. Do we have a number as to how many of the seclusion restraints were for special needs children? I see it's a requirement in here, but I don't see it in the report.
I'm sorry, let me just check the report. I forgot Jackie was going to be gone tonight. I believe they're all from special education, Quinn. That's what this report is about.
Yeah.
It's bound within special education. So, and the CPI training that's referred to in here is because that's the specific training required by law. If we have a child with an IEP who needs to be restrained for some reason, that we've maxed out every other option prior to that. So this law only applies to those students who have an IEP. So the number you see in here in the reported incidents, all of those would be students with an IEP.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Then I'll take a motion to approve items 5C and 5D.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Item 6A, 2018-19 preliminary budget for publication. Take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6B, core values, Whitnall prospectus data. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Can we have discussion? No?
Not for the,
Before you, well, now that you just took a vote on it, right?
we were going to have the discussion under the 7 reports, right? After the presentation by Josh.
Yeah, so this was actually to approve the core values. The
Correct.
discussion is around branding and marketing and all of the other, filling out the document a little bit more. So there was two different things. One was to actually take board action on the core values themselves.
Okay.
Joe will be coming, because it is a report, so those are two separate items on there, because we do want to have a dialogue now that you've had a week to digest it in terms of feedback on all of those other things. So that would be the discussion there, so just to clarify.
I'll just bring it up in
Okay.
Next.
items for
He is,
future.
he's coming from the city, Franklin, he had a
agenda.
presentation at the city there too. So.
So Joe is running behind, so what we'll do is we'll move the items around under 7, if that's okay with everyone on the board. So we'll go with 7B, K-12 update on grading and reporting procedures with Lynn.
So, we are going to do a bit of an update. We spent a lot of time over the course of last school year talking about our grading and reporting systems, some things that have been legacy in place for a long time, some things that continue to work for us, but some things that also are in need of updates and new looks and revisions. So we spent last year really working to figure out our high school grading systems, and early in the year, last summer, we stumbled upon the fact that we had a lot of people who had great intentions, really working to find the best practices in grading. We're trying to work with a standards referenced or standards-based grading system. We found that people had morphed into multiple systems, causing a little bit of confusion within our own system. So last year, we said, pick one, pick a more traditional scale or pick a standards, reference scale, and stick with one or the other. And that, because it became a very overt, it's traditional or it's this 5-point scale, became a bit of a problem in itself because it created some confusion, because now we were talking openly about it instead of it being just a thing that was happening within a class or a classroom or several classrooms. So we did a pretty good job of wrestling through that, and teachers did an admirable job of saying, yes, we're working with this or we're working with that, and trying to make the two systems work together. But coming into this year, we really have to say, we need to clarify what's happening. So we've gone from the traditional 5-point, we're going to move into this year with only one scale. So we're gonna use one scale only. And we have worked really hard to honor the teachers that have been using the traditional scale and the teachers who have been working hard with this 5-point scale to come up with a scale that is a 5-level scale, but it works to really work well with the GPA system and the grade point average system and not mess with the computing of things. So it is going to be a scale that's divided into 5 levels. We are going to ask teachers to, with students, really focus on the descriptors, because the verbal descriptions and that kind of feedback is much more indicative of the learning than just numbers and percentages. So we're going to say these levels have these descriptors. The language will not change much from the descriptors that we had on the 5-point scale last year. And students are going to be assigned in Infinite Campus in the grade books a point value based on their place in the learning continuum. Teachers are not going to be limited to whole numbers. One of the concerns is always like, if we have this 5-point scale, what if we've got someone who's sort of hovering between a 3 and a 4? They're really pushing the top of that 3. They're kind of in the 4. So we came up with a scale that's going to allow a lot of flexibility within that 5 points. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove the running percentages display in Infinite Campus, which does not mean it's not computing, but because the display often confuses people, they're like, okay, the points, the percentages, what is this, what is that compared to my GPA? And Infinite Campus and all of the mathematical things doesn't really help us. It hurts us more than anything. So we're just limiting that display so that people aren't looking at all these different sets of numbers. On the next slide is how we are going to parcel out that 5-point scale. And all of these quarter marks line up exactly with your A's, your A minus, your B plus, your B, your B minus, your C plus. So basically, teachers can do whatever form of computing they would like at this point. They can say that they're still doing, percentages and points over here, and at that point that they say this kid is falling into the C minus range, there is a C minus number mark that's going to be computed. Again, we ask them, what's the difference? Why don't we just keep doing the same thing? We really want students to start looking at the descriptions of a learning continuum. So the scale has the numbers, but it also continues to have that breakout of those 5 distinct levels of understanding as they're being held against a standard. So we're really looking at, here's the standard, here's the complexity of the standard, where are you in meeting the complexity of that particular standard.
So Lynn,
Yep.
please explain that for me, because that is the question that is asked over and over. Why are we doing this if we ultimately give them a grade letter?
Yeah, they're still going to get a letter grade, and the GPA is still going to compute off the letter grades. At the end of the day, people think that the math is what drives the letter grades, and the letter grade is actually they're thinking that the math behind their class grade is what drives the GPA, when the letter grade is actually what drives the grade point average calculation. You put a B in there, that's the grade point calculation. It's not the 82% that went into all of the workings in the grade book. Does that make sense?
So are we going to communicate this to parents and students and teachers?
Yes. We're going to spend some time this week in the August launch working with this. We're spending some session time on Friday with teachers and saying this is what we're going to do. We're going to spend a significant chunk of time with high school teachers because some of them are very familiar with this already, this type of system. It's a little bit more flexible than they're used to as far as having the number reporting piece. But the big why is, and we had a lot of conversation last year with families and students, and they're like, I just want someone to tell me I've got an 82%. When we drill down to, but what does the 82% mean? You know 82% of calculus? What's 82% of calculus? So what's 82% mean? So we really want people to focus on what does it mean to really meet that standard, to highly meet it, to be thinking in complex ways? What does it mean to be thinking, you're making some errors and omissions, but you're kind of getting the right ideas, but they're not all pulled together just yet? What does it mean to be rocking it out and you're at the top of that scale and you're ready to move on to something else? That's all more verbal feedback and narrative feedback that has the deeper meaning when you're communicating the learning piece. So we're trying to take away just I got a 91, rockin'. What does a 91 actually mean in the learning world? As we're getting more and more feedback from beyond K-12 systems, and people are saying we really need the critical thinking piece, we really need students to be able to almost be metacognitive, thinking about the thinking. So thinking about the learning, thinking about how I learn. That's all narrative. That's all the ability to go deeper than just tell me what to do. I do it. Here I did it. I'm done. So we're trying to get everyone to just think more deeply. And this system is our first crack at cracking the surface of just those points and percentages.
So is it a cumulative thing? So I'm thinking of, if you have a semester's worth of work and each assignment gets a number value to it, and if there's 5 assignments in one unit, then are these point values averaged?
So
Or
there's
do
still
you-
going to be calculations running.
Okay, so because then again, I'm still trying to grapple with this, that if you started out and if you got a letter grade of a C on the first assignment, but you learned as you went and you got an A as a letter grade on the last assignment in the unit, then that shows your progress in one way, and it's taking that entire body of work that by the end of the unit you got it.
Yep, and so what we're gonna do is we're going to tweak the system to get us thinking about what we're actually assigning. So instead of saying you have an assignment, an assignment, an assignment, an assignment, and those just all automatically average together, we're setting up categories in the grade book that say there's a category for your feedback and the like assignment that's just practice and you're working at it, you're gaining some understanding. It's not gonna be calculated in your grade. You have assessment feedback, academic assessment feedback, or that's what counts. So we're really gonna get teachers to think about what is actually the high leverage stuff instead of just taking it all and it all counts to the same level or same degree, so to speak.
Okay, so you've got more competencies that you're trying to master,
Exactly.
and you're measuring it by the competencies, not necessarily by volume of work or number of correct answers in a test.
That's the whole idea behind the standards-based grading. It's just such a shift from what we've
Yeah.
done.
It's gonna take a while.
It's gonna take a while, yeah, we totally understand that. Yep. But this is the first, we thought this was a good first start to let people work within that type of framework, but you can still kind of do it the way you're used to doing it as you get used to working in the framework and make that shift.
My only question about the scale is on the 4.5 to 5, the student indicator of success. It says I could easily teach this to someone. How are we going to be able to define that? Are you going to have to teach it to someone to get in there? Because I mean, the
No.
other ones I kind of understand. Okay, you can easily show that on an exam or a project you're doing, but how are we going to show this to someone when I just see the parent arguing or the student saying, "What do I need to teach this to somebody? I clearly
Yeah.
know it."
And that's one of the things that we're talking about, changing some of that wording, because it's really designed to be just the idea that you are so
Yeah,
comfortable
you're
with
so-
it that
yeah.
you can engage in conversation,
Mhm.
and you could sit and have a cup of coffee over it and really go back and
Mhm.
forth with it. So we are gonna change some of the wording mildly on both of these rubrics,
Mhm.
9-12 and the K-8 one, to just be a little bit more concrete in
Yeah.
the expectations. We don't
Okay.
want people to be.
Yeah, that's what I just
confused,
don't want to happen. Yeah.
Any more questions on levels here? Okay, so when we go on, so what we're looking at for this coming year, K-5, we're not going to mess with that so much, because 9-12 just needs the attention right now. We're really gonna set our sights there. So K-5 levels, we're not gonna do a lot of changes. Teachers and principals, we did meet with some teachers and principals, 3 weeks ago now, to look at report cards, reporting systems. And they're pretty hungry to change some things on their report card and how we're reporting out, but we said, we can't do everything all at once. We're just gonna be like burning them on the head, hair on fire if we get into too many things at once. So they're gonna sit still for a little bit and not undergo any significant changes at the K-5 level. In 6-8, we're largely staying the same there. What we did do there as well is, we added a level at the bottom. So Kathy, if you could kind of go forward and then go down. Yeah. So what we did is we just added that level at the bottom that just says no. It won't be widely used, commonly used, but it'll be used in one of those rare situations where maybe the student hasn't been present, or, hasn't been around, or is very new and just hasn't had a chance to really turn anything in. What we're really trying to do here is line up this system to be a 5-level system, because eventually we probably want to have the middle school and high school grading scales to look similar. If we're going to have 8th graders taking high school courses, even 7th graders, we're going to get more fluid with with who gets to take which things, we probably want those two scales to look a little more similar. Right now, this one does not have numbers, we didn't change any of that, we just kept the wording the same, we just added that level on the bottom, just to indicate there might be some situations where there's no evidence going on yet. The last thing that we did was about a month ago, we got K-8 principals and teachers together and said, you know, here are the things we're looking at, here are the things moving forward, what things we want to consider. And we're going to keep convening that group as well. So the K-8 will get some attention when we're paying closer attention to 9-12. Then, new for grades 6 through 12 is the next slide. And this is going to be a big change, and I think teachers are going to like this, because when we are grading students, a lot of times we will mix up the learning and what they understand with the dispositions that actually got them there. So if you have students that haven't turned in any work, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't know the stuff, but sometimes the grade makes it look like they don't know the stuff. Sometimes you have students that are not really compliant and they're resisting the efforts of the teacher in the classroom. Doesn't mean they don't know how to do something, but we've got nothing showing for it because we're saying, well, all they're doing is walking out of class, they get a bad grade. So what we're going to do in grades 6 through 12, we're going to have a life skills feedback category in Infinite Campus, where this is where teachers can report on these 3 categories: respect and personal integrity, collaboration, communication, and responsibility and work habits. And that way you can really say, this is what's leading to either really great performance in the classroom, or we've got some things lacking in the classroom, but these things might be contributing to it, and it might be a clearer picture for everybody, teachers, students, parents, to really be thinking about those things. So that's going to be an additional category in the grade books in middle school and high school. And we're going to ask teachers to put in at least one indicator weekly, just one indicator weekly on each of these things. So 1 week we're saying we're going to focus on respect and personal integrity, rate your students on that. 1 week we're going to say collaboration, communication, rate the students on that. So that's going to be a big shift as well.
So this will end up showing up more like comments back to the parent or student, or does this actually generate a grade? Or
This will not generate a grade.
Okay.
So there's going to be 3 main categories in Infinite Campus. There will be an academic feedback, where you have your homework, you have your practice stuff, you can give them assignments, you can give them little practice things. That's all things that can go in Infinite Campus, but it won't calculate a grade. It's just everything in feedback leading up to the assessment category. That's where the stuff that counts goes. But if you've got enough feedback in this category, by the time you get to the assessment, you should be in pretty decent shape, or at least know why you're not in pretty good shape. And then we have the life skills feedback category. So those 2 categories, which is also non-calculating. The only calculating category is the assessment category. Questions on that?
So if someone doesn't turn in homework at all, then that's fine?
It depends. I mean, if a kid can turn in homework, but they can perform all the tasks and they know the stuff, so to speak, should they be? That's the thing that teachers have always long wrestled with.
How do you know if they can, if they aren't turning in homework?
What's that?
How do you know if they can do it or are learning it if they're not turning in any homework?
Well, if you've got things going on in the classroom, that wouldn't be necessarily the homework piece, but things are happening in classrooms every day that are pretty busy places, and you can usually tell if a student understands a concept. You can sit down and have a discussion with a student and know if they've got some things in the classroom that doesn't necessarily get generated by homework. Our struggle as teachers has always been, the homework is the responsibility part. That's the accountability part, and that's what we want you to be responsible for, because the responsibility is, we want to grow that in you. But then we sometimes said, we're giving you a bad grade because you didn't do homework, but did that mean you didn't understand the learning? Or was it because you weren't being responsible? Tricky bogey.
My only thing is, and I think I said it before when we had one of the original presentations on this, is I understand the idea of knowing the concepts, and you might not get it at the beginning of the year, but you can get it at the end of the year, and the idea we're not going to punish you for not understanding it right away. But at the same time, sort of like Nancy was saying, as far as doing homework, we could be sending some kid off to college with 0 time management skills because they know all these concepts, but they've never had to turn anything in. They just know it. It's not necessarily going to fly in that now either college, trade school, or generally the workforce.
And
How do
our
we, I guess, how do we
teachers-
manage that?
Yeah, and our teachers are gonna be savvy to that, because if you've got a kid that's not turning in homework, first of all, you gotta be careful, because some kids don't have a home to go to
Yeah.
at night. So when we say everyone's expected to do homework, we've now placed a unilateral expectation on a bunch of people that don't have a unilateral situation going on once they leave us at the end of the day. So we've gotta be careful there. I think our teachers are very savvy in that when a kid is not turning in homework, they will find other ways to say to the student, look, okay, you didn't give me this, what will you show me, what will you give me to let us know that you're okay with this understanding, this level of whatever. Ideally, also, teachers have to make that homework very meaningful to the student and let them understand, this is why this homework is important. This is a building block and foundational thing to where we're going with the assessment, the project, the whatever you're going to do next. So, and our teachers are good that way. They're very savvy with knowing those students and knowing what they need to do.
What I would say to both Nancy and Kevin's point is that I think this is a step in the right direction to maybe correct some of the things that maybe skewed too far the other way with the previous system. So first thing is that a teacher has the prerogative, if a student has not demonstrated feedback, they've not given them any work or indication in class or anything they've turned in, they don't have to give them that assessment, because you can tell a student, you haven't given me any indication whether or not you're ready for it, so I'm not going to give you this assessment because you haven't done that. That's their prerogative. So that's the first thing that our teachers need to do more of if they're feeling that I have no evidence. Second of all, what I would say is that we are in the process, and that's why this year for the life skills feedback, it's just feedback right now. There are some opportunities to take that in terms of giving it its own GPA just for this category and not calculate it into it, and use that for some other privileges or some other pieces of it to weight it in its own category. But there could be students that we know who could, to your point, just do the work or come in and maybe understand the concepts but not do all of those other skills that we value. So we've been talking about the redefining ready piece and all of those other life skills. Right now, it looks like as a school district we only value the academic skills because we aren't giving any attention to or calling out the life skills piece of it. This is our first step in that process by this year calling it in its own category, by giving actual feedback for every student on a consistent basis in every single high school class. That has never happened before. So for the first time, you're going to see this for every class on a weekly basis. So each week I will get at least 7 scores on my life skills feedback, and that's the conversation starter to start having. You might be getting 5s and 4s, but you're not, in terms of responsibility, you're not bringing your supplies to class. Parents don't have that feedback right now, right? That, like, they're just assuming that their kid is doing this or participating in classroom discussions or whatever it is. So it's the first step in giving some feedback into this. We can then decide now what can we use it for, because if we're going to value this stuff just as much as we do the academic piece, because I think we hear from employers and we know it out in the workplace that all of this stuff is equally important, we've got to start looking at it with that same lens, or at least giving feedback to students on it, right? So I think it's the first step in doing more with that, because I don't disagree with you, Kevin, that a lot of stuff is just the perseverance stuff to make it through. Sometimes there are hoops to jump, and that's life. Like, you like it or don't like it, but that's how it is. But if we haven't given feedback to a student that they can jump the hoop versus, well, you know the concept, so I can't punish you on that, but I also didn't have an opportunity or place to give you feedback on how well you can do some of those other things. So this is the first step in giving feedback in that, and then we can decide where else we want to do. If I'm going to apply for a job and I have a 4.0 life skills, because that's how I am as far as a responsible student, maybe my academic GPA is a 3.0, but I'm that good of a student in this type of thing, I can tell you which one of those employers would prefer to have as higher in terms of that. They're not so concerned about the ACT test at some point, but they are concerned if they can collaborate and communicate, if they show up for work, if they have all of those other pieces. So this is our first step in finally starting to quantify those and give feedback to our students and use those. So not perfect by any means, but at least it's starting to give feedback on those things that we don't have a consistent mode that we've been doing that before. We left it up to teachers maybe putting it in comments. And I'm not going to ask you to call out if all teachers have ever done that, but I've seen that, Not every student consistently gets feedback on a report card related to those types of things, right? Or their pre-packaged comments. So this is at least an effort to try to start to give some feedback in those things that we're saying we think they're important too.
Okay. And then for part two here, we're going to move on to WHS weighted and unweighted courses.
I'll stand. How about that?
Say something about the last part.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so I appreciate what you're trying to do. I kind of echo the concerns that have already been expressed, and I just don't know how valuable the life skills end up being in general when it comes to versus academics when it comes to getting through college. So if you're looking at folks going through college instead of right into the workforce. And the other thing I would say is I'm just concerned about the level of subjectivity that might be getting into the report card. But other than that, yeah, I understand what you guys are trying to do.
Well, I think you need to be broad because not everybody goes to college.
Yes, but you can't leave behind those kids that do want to go to college.
No.
I mean, I agree with you, Quinn, that we can't, my point isn't towards that. It's towards we need to make sure also that we're not kids' chances to go to college if their grades get affected downward because of poor life skills, because it's not the life skills as much as the academics, at least, I don't know, at least initially, that gets kids through college.
Yeah, John, I don't think you're understanding. So this isn't going to be a negative grade for them for the life skills portion.
Just for feedback?
Correct.
Okay, well, that's good then. Thanks.
Sure. Are you able to view the presentation?
Yep.
Okay, because it lays it out right in there too, but, okay.
It just doesn't explain, I just couldn't catch from it whether it was going to be integrated into part of the grading or not. So, all right. Thank you.
Okay.
So we're going to move into a discussion about weighted and unweighted courses and grading scales. Through our Parent Learning Academy sessions last year, we did a lot of sessions on grading because we had these two scales going on at the high school. But there were things beyond that too that parents were concerned with and students and wanting to know more information. And through those, we uncovered some things that we hadn't really known were in place. And so we're now vetting those out and really looking at our weighted and unweighted courses and grading scales.
So the list that's up there, these are the courses that we had weighted previously. So this year, moving forward, there are some changes to this. We are adding AP language, that's not up there, but just as a generality, those are the courses that in previous years have been weighted. So we have two scales when it comes time to the GPA. And as Lynn alluded to, the letter grade that the student gets in that course is then translated into a GPA. On a student's transcript, they have their weighted GPA and their unweighted GPA that are published. When colleges see that, they then look at those two pieces of evidence for a student to identify how they would then, I guess, re-rank a student based on a weighted or unweighted GPA. If you go to the next slide here. It was brought to our attention, these are very small font here, but these are some of the descriptors of how class rank comes about and then what's determined for class rank. On our list of courses that we have weighted, we have some courses that are offer a little more subjectivity in terms of the curriculum. An honors course, for example, allows a little more subjectivity for a teacher to choose versus an AP, which is a clearly defined curriculum. And so with that, we weight both equally. So we feel there are potentially some things that we need to look at with how are we choosing weighted classes. But additionally, if you go to the next slide, Kathy, it was brought to our attention that our scale is different than what we have seen before. And I know I've had conversations with a few of you guys in regards to this here. The way that we are, I guess the folks of us who have come from other districts that are used to seeing weighted versus unweighted is that it's a standard 1 point difference. So if you have a 5-point scale for your weighted GPA, everything is increased by 1 point. So if you have a A in a weighted class, it's worth a 5 on that GPA. For us, we have a sliding scale, and this was brought to our attention by a parent, and it actually goes back to, I think, 1993 when the board approved it this way. So we have some concerns with this for the fact that if we want to challenge students to take AP level classes or honors level classes, and we're weighting their GPA for those things, but yet they're going to challenge themselves, they should have an appropriate bonus, if you will, for that challenge. If I'm a student and I get a C in my honors class, I'm given a GPA of 2.5. Perhaps in an unweighted class, in a regular class, I could get a B in that class, which would be a 3.0. So my GPA now is negatively affected because I've challenged myself. So there's some discrepancies here that we'd like to eventually get down the line of looking at and figuring out how we can make some adjustments.
You're looking to just go for the straight 1 point difference? Because I know in ours has always been the 1.25 multiplier. But we're going to try and move in that direction. Is that how everywhere else more or less operates?
Correct. We tried to search. We could not find another school district that had this GPA.
1.25, what does that mean?
You multiply the non-weighted by 1.25 gets your weighted. So like a 2 times 1.25 gets you 2.5. A 4 times 1.25 gets you a 5. So whatever normal grade you would get in a non-weighted class, you
So
multiply by 1.25.
you've backed into it the formula that they got, but the logic isn't really, I mean, that's
No,
that's
I
a
know what
mathematical
it
formula,
is.
yeah.
I've always known that's what it was. I didn't know.
So in that last column with the 1, that's like the increment of what it is.
The
which is
one
what-
is 1.25 times 4.
Right, so from that standpoint, that's the multiplier, but the
Yeah.
range that you're getting, the increment of it, so that's interesting.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
better grade you get,
Correct.
So
Well,
larger
it-
disparity
right,
it
it
is. So
magnifies, correct,
yeah, a
yeah.
B and an A
Yeah.
are vastly different than.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when we talk about obviously wanting to challenge our students and prepare them for college, prepare them for beyond, we want our students to, and we've presented data around AP scores, we really want to challenge our students to appropriately take AP classes, not take a class that they're taking just for a grade weight multiplier, or taking and struggling with because they really should be in a different course. To me, this is another one of those issues where the students who are getting straight A's obviously have a much higher chance of getting a higher weighted GPA than those students who perhaps are taking full load classes and challenging themselves with lots of different options of courses.
I mean, like you were saying, someone could be taking all grade weighted classes, getting B's, and average of 3.75 and everything, whereas if they just take the regular ones, they could be averaging 4.0.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think that's the most common, that is the most common one, where a student who might be a B student or whatever it is, that's the student we do want to push a little bit more to see what that college level material is. They're actually getting penalized
Yeah.
by the system, so. And it was brought to us by the parent who would like to see the change yesterday,
Yes.
but.
Yes.
So is this something that you are going to do like retroactively?
Go back and.
So the difficulty that we have is twofold. One, we have a system through Infinite Campus that there's just a lot of back-end work that has to happen to get that to happen, because the courses, or the GPA weight is tied to the course, not to the student. So we have mixed grade levels in certain classes where there may be freshmen and sophomores in classes with juniors and seniors. So that's our first issue of trying to do this. Secondly, our class rank is based on our weighted GPA system, not our standard non-weighted GPA system. What that does then is that will, for our current senior class, those individuals who have been calculating their GPAs over the years to find their class rank, they may find themselves all of a sudden flipping from perhaps a top spot down to a lower spot. So it becomes a much more complicated process for us. We want to obviously bring it to your attention at this point, so as we bring forth some possibilities and solutions, you're aware of, I guess, some of the pitfalls that might happen.
So you are gonna address that?
We'd like to. We'd like to.
It's giving them your home phone number is what it is.
Me or my child aren't gonna go that far down, so.
Well, I'm just saying is that parents will be, there's no perfect way to do this. And so we've gone through, do we do it by graduating class? Do we, and I think Charlie gave you our dilemma right now. We really feel like doing anything this year is probably not enough notice because people will say, I registered for classes based on whatever, and who knows. But we feel like we're, because we haven't even started the school year, that if we do make changes for 1920, we believe because of the mixed grade classes, the only way to do it is literally across the board. Freshmen, sophomores, probably not a lot of impact moving forward. Giving fair enough notice, but I think we're in this, so people can start to think about what that looks like. Otherwise, I don't know how you will ever fix it, or we just go on saying that that's the dilemma in terms of that.
Would you just start it with the freshmen that are starting?
The problem is that when they're sophomores, they will be in mixed classes with juniors, and the class is weighted, not the student.
Yeah, so that's, the juniors in the class might be getting this scale, and the sophomores would be getting the other scale.
And there's
Well,
no
you'd
way
have
to,
to run a separate system.
Which isn't,
Infinite Campus will not allow us to
Yeah.
do that.
You'd have to run a manual system.
yeah, that,
It was either all or nothing.
because DPI pulls from that. I mean, like, we don't have the option of running manual. So that was
All college transcripts are now electronic, so we don't
it
even,
pulls directly from there. We don't even do
we don't
anything.
print them and mail them anymore.
So Nancy, why did you do this back in '93?
I wasn't on the board.
I thought you were.
So how does this also dovetail with a career path? Because the other thing that this may or may not have brought to light yet is that if you have a particular career path that a student is on, that career path may not tie into a grade weighted class, but
Correct.
they're still going to excel. They're still going to be challenged.
Correct.
They should still be rewarded in some way.
Correct.
So how do you address that?
So, as you can imagine, this conversation, consumes, because it is,
Yeah.
once you pull up, like I've said before, my analogy is once you pull a thread, you start to unravel, and pretty soon you have a ball of yarn, and so where are we at with this? And it's a pretty passionate subject for parents and students. So the next question then becomes, and many districts around us have looked at more than just GPA. They have looked at a couple other criteria in terms of what that means to graduate. There are several districts in the state for many years that have gone to, so the class rank is the one thing that drives this. There are many districts that have gone away from class rank. They have gone to a Latte system just like in college, and so it's not I'm competing to be 1, 2, or 3. I can be magna cum laude, you can be magna cum laude. We're not competing against it, and once the bar is set, the bar is set. So it begs the question of the class rank system, because it's a very sad story if you've ever heard a high school student say that they didn't take a music class or an art class because they would have lost their place in class rank. And we all know that kid. It could be a very personal story for you, but I think that's a very sad, tragic story. I don't think we're doing our job because they're afraid of losing their class rank. So the question really becomes, is it about, and who's putting the value on it? Because that could be what that child's passion is, but just because we don't wait, and I think going back to the slide that was up there, it'd be interesting, and I don't know if it goes back to 1993 or before, but some of those classes that are on there are not AP classes. And how they were on there or how they were not at the time, I don't know. We don't have that historical perspective. So that is also giving an unequal opportunity for kids whose skills and aptitudes might not be in those areas, but might be very gifted in some of those other areas. So districts have had to try to, just like college does, look a little bit more holistically at what it is. And I think we would always say with an AP class that there was a third party that sort of looks at the fidelity of that. You really don't have a choice of what you're teaching in an AP class or not. It's pretty much prescribed for you. Honors classes are where we get to what is our honors, whatever, compared to a different district's honors, whatever. It's really up to the teacher teaching it there. So it brings up some questions, and that's why we're starting this conversation about it, is how far do you want to pull that thread out when you start doing it? Because one is the weighted piece of it. If you fix it and it is no longer class rank, and it is a Laude system, it mitigates some of the impact of I was ranked third and now I'm 23rd because my classes that I took in the past. I still meet the benchmark of a magna cum laude, so now it is, I still have that highest rank that there is. But the other pieces of recognition also can go on top of, whatever that looks like. So clearly there are lots of topics that are all mixed up in what this is.
We still allow the auditing of classes?
We do not audit classes. That went away this past year. I think previous to that, I was asking our counselors, it was somewhat rare. They would have 1, 2, 3 students in these last 5 years that audited.
I know some people that audited classes, so it wouldn't affect their GPA.
Right.
I think it was a little bit higher than
They
that.
class,
It
but
was
they could
higher
still
than
take
that.
it.
It was like 25 per grade that were, and it would do it once, juniors and seniors mostly, because that's when they knew what their class rank was, and they were really trying to preserve it. So we did eliminate that, but it's all, all these concepts are related to each other. The reason you audit is to preserve your GPA. The reason you reserve your GPA is because of your class rank. So.
Okay.
So that's what we got. Don't have a solution yet.
So what would be the next step? What are you going to be looking at next, or the conversations? Where does it go from here?
Well, obviously, we'd like to involve parents in the conversation next, students as well, so they have an understanding of these pieces. We would like to make sure that we have our ducks in a row on, I guess, a action plan of where we'd like to go, if that is a Laude system, if it's just a complete removal of class rank. There are a lot of threads to pull on this that we'd like to present some options based on some feedback that we get, and that'll be the conversation through the year. Our hope is that when we publish the course guide in December, January timeframe, that we've got a plan in place so that we can have that clearly published and articulated out to the students.
So we all know that with this recorded, since the topic of getting rid of class rank has been brought up, that the conversation may start in the community that, oh, they're getting rid of class rank, right? Even though it's just such, so can we start having maybe community or parent listening sessions at the beginning of the school year to obviously talk about the grading changes, but to actually have the information so that they know that we're not making the change right away, or how do we get the information out there to say we're not making the change right away? This is how the conversation started. These are the pieces we have now. This is what the journey looks like this is a starting point. How do we get that out there so that the message isn't that we're changing it, just this is a starting point? Maybe
Yeah.
something to think about for
Yeah.
the next meeting, I don't know. But we all know how this can spiral.
So we want to, and why we separate, if you saw it tonight, it was intentional that Lynn took the first part about, because that was the grading scales and the things that we're doing, and Charlie took the other part of it, because those are two different issues. So we'd like to get the school year off the first few weeks so we can take care of what we've resolved from this 2-point, we had a traditional and the 5-point and all of the stuff around that, so we can see what that is. I think it's too easy to confuse the two. They're really separate issues. We could have done a 100-point scale and still would have had these issues with this, and still would have had class rank and all of that stuff. So they're two separate things. So yes, soon, I think Charlie had, as he said, talking to parents and students of what that looks like, but giving us a few weeks to get the school year off the ground so we can implement the new grading, the more consistent grading practices in terms of that before we venture into future years or what the case is as far as that. So this school year, We are not eliminating make sure I'm saying this. We are not eliminating valedictorian and salutatorian or class rank or the other recognitions that we have previously done in terms of top 10% or any of those things. We are looking at in the future resolving the discrepancy with the weighted grades, which is not proportionate depending upon the grade that you earn, looking at potentially which courses are weighted or not weighted. So there's a lot of issues that are in there, and some might be yes and some might be no, some might be easier to implement than others, but all of those require some feedback, and they're all intertwined with each other. So to be very clear, no changes this school year in terms of all of the class rank and valedictorian and GPA calculations. So we have just brought to the attention that by a parent that weighted scale is not equal. We're just sharing it and that we're aware of it and now trying to look at solutions, but we will not be able to fix it for 18-19.
Okay. Thank you. All right, thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Charlie. All right, we'll go back to 7A now, the Whitnall prospectus. We're all in with Lisa and
Joe, you can
Joe.
come up here and sit if you would like. Kathy, do you want to put that up here? So we did approve just the actual core values. So this is Joe. Joe has a freshman daughter and a senior son. I'll let you introduce yourself beyond that.
Hi. I know some of you.
Hi, Joe.
My name's Joe Rausch. I do have a freshman that's just starting. I do have a senior that's, I think he played football on Friday. Yeah, you should have. Anyway, that's another story. So, I guess a few years ago, well, I started a research project and I didn't know it, I guess, since I've lived here. So we moved in 18 years ago, and we live down on the south end of the 116, I'll call it. So I live on Woods Road, and across the street is Franklin, or we're in Franklin. Across the street you go to all Franklin schools. And 12 years ago, we got a surprise. We thought we were going to Countrydale, and we got a note in the mail that we're going to Whitnall, or Franklin Whitnall School. Welcome to Hales Corners Elementary. And our neighbors were formerly teachers in Milwaukee Public Schools or something, and they were telling us, oh, wow, your kids are going here. Well, surprise. So I've been driving down 116th now for the last 12 years. And I told Dr. Olson that I should have invented something a number of years ago because it would have saved my elbow. I wanted to design a piece of wood or plastic that would sit outside my window and just wave as I go down 116th Street. Because I got involved with youth football and cheer, but we'd be driving to school or driving anywhere and it's, Dad, why didn't you wave? What? I didn't see anything. Well, that's the heights, or that was the trenches, or that was its name's going. I'm like, I can't see. I'm trying to drive in the sun, and it's all the way. It's every day. It's unique. I've never been in a situation like this. I grew up in Wauwatosa. My parents had a place up in Rhinelander, so I was up in the woods. You know, driving down country roads, you see people at the mailbox, but you don't know who they are. And this is just kind of a unique situation to me. And again, I'm 2 cities away, and I'm only a mile and a half away. And I'm I'm 3 blocks out of Muskego, so if we lived there, I don't know what, we'd be going to all schools, I guess. But, so this has been kind of a unique community to me, and just the people that are involved, and so much, Hales Corners is so much a part of us, yet we're still in Greenfield. I thought it was a travesty when on national television, when Joel Stabby gets announced that he's from Greenfield. I thought that was ridiculous, and I'm still angry about it, but anyway.
Well, he is.
But he's not.
Yeah, he is.
No, he isn't. He's from here.
It's from Whitnall.
They
Is what he
talk
was
about
saying.
Greenfield, and it's like, I went to Pius. They would announce that I went to Pius, but we're different. We're not a private school, and we're so unique in that way. And so I've never experienced, I got a lot of Pius friends and business people that I still do. There's a lot of them in this community. And it's pretty funny, there's a mini Pius community here. But so this is real different and unique, and I've experienced it for a long time. And I guess I was asked a few years ago from the basketball, Whitnall Youth basketball coach, to design a shirt, because we were going to state. And that's at least an invitation that was nice that we're going. And he said, Joe, I'd like you to do that for me. And I was like, oh, sure, okay, I'd do that. And I said, so do you have like an idea or a theme, or what's our mantra? Do you have a motto or anything? No. Go win it? I don't know, I guess. So I started to work on some ideas, and I had donated, I'd done a lot of stuff for Whitnall Youth Football and Cheer. My goal was to kind of rebrand that organization when I got involved and just make everything really kind of nice and bold and unique, and there weren't stringent rules to follow through the high school at that particular time. So I spent a lot of time developing some things over the years. Well, as I did this, as I sat down to do these concepts, I didn't have an idea where I was going, but I stumbled upon something built within the name. And I realized that the word all was in Whitnall. When it's, Whitnall Falcons and it goes all together, I just kept thinking about how we're kind of in this all together. Maybe it's a High School Musical thing, overlapping, but I started to think about, well, we're all in. Well, this is true, because everybody that we see going down the road there, all these families are involved with other sports, and they, and this, well, now what if it went beyond sports? It should go beyond sports. It should be all-inclusive. So rather than, in this little area down here where a football or a basketball could be, why can't we put the theater masks in there? Or why, if it's the chess club, I don't care, why can't it be other things? Why can't it include, it should be all-inclusive. So I guess I talked about it, the Whitnall Youth Basketball Club embraced it, and we've done it the last couple of years. 2016 was the first year we did it. I printed some extra shirts to share with Coach Quinlan last year, just to say, hey, I think this could work in football, blah, blah, blah. I think some things were already picked, but anyway, I just felt it had some legs. So I've been hanging on to it, and I've been sharing it with others. Some people have been very much advocates for this, and I guess as I talked to Dr. Olson, she kind of got it right away and understood. I could see it working in the community. I could see it being stickers in all the stores in Hales Corners. I want to be able to walk in a store and just say, all right, it just has to say we're all in. It doesn't have to have Whitnall Falcons. Just that we've been there, we embrace them as a local community business owner. We don't have to get money out of them. We just have to tell them about what we're doing, what our students, maybe it's a student and a teacher go out, maybe it's booster club and students go out. But I think if we get them out, we could pick blocks within the community and maybe visit every home, offer to senior citizens, we just want to put this up on your door. And just so you know, this is what we have going on, the theaters, plays going on. We'd love to invite you to this. If you need a ride, we'll come do it. Or if you need snow shoveled, because we care and we're all in. And, I just came up with a new one, I think today. I signed off on the email. I said, we're all in and we will win.
You did say that, yeah.
I did say
One
that.
of those
So
emails
there was,
today.
I think there's so many other things to explore, and just the whole concept of having the community, or having it driven from the simple, athletics, to taking over into all areas is special. I don't know, I've not really seen it. I've been doing branding and development of this kind of stuff for 35 years, and this is kind of a happy accident, but I think it could really have meaning and have power and impact a lot of different people, and not just be a dumb t-shirt design. That's what it is.
A couple of years ago at the state convention, there was a school district way up north. I don't recall the school district, but I went to the breakout group, and it was, I think it was a small community, and it was divided, I think because of a referendum, and they came up with a slogan about community involvement, about just what you're talking about, and it really brought, and it went to the businesses and didn't want nothing, just as, this is what we are, this is what we are. And it really, it had a happy ending, obviously, but it really brought that community together. And I really applaud you, and I really like that way you're going about it.
Thank you. I've not really seen it. I just unfortunately, we're living in the world of destruction on Highway 100, but those businesses that are back there, they're again struggling. I mean, they're struggling now because that's terrible. And I went through, my first business was over on Blue Mountain Road, and they tore that apart 25 years ago, and it was just the crazy disaster. Businesses went out of business, the economic development, the people tried to help them, but there was nothing, or, you know, there was not kind of the commitment where we have, I mean, they're blocks away from us, and I'd still like to go into those stores and know that they're supporting us rather than maybe Hustle and Hogs or something like that.
Absolutely.
But
So as I said last week, the one thing that we did, the word that we kept sort of playing with, and it had a lot of, was the word community, because I think you get this sense of community, what it is. And I think that the We're All In tried to capture that without saying that, because I think it's a more clever way of saying, but also I think has a deeper meaning than just sense of community. It's sense of community seems a little more surface level than the we're all in type of thing. So the discussion tonight is to sort of look at each of these pieces, where it is, but also the whole we're all in, or what it does mean. We do have some activities as our teachers come back this week and staff come back next week to sort of play with some of these and sort of personalize it, have them look at some of those values, but in terms of what does that mean when we say we're all in. And so last week was the first time you saw it, and it's only been a week ago. But if you've had some thoughts since then on either any of the pieces or the vision piece of we're all in and what that means, this is the discussion piece of it.
So I know fall sports have just started, right? If we're going in this direction, is this something that we could turn around and have a branding campaign for all sports teams around the We're All In? And like the fall sports, get shirts for those teams out now.
Yeah, Dave and I talked a little bit, and we want to be careful that it's just not an athletics thing.
No, I agree, but
Yeah.
I'm saying so that it starts now. And we blast it out. All the teachers can have them to start the school year. Maybe the first day of school.
In 2 days, like a little.
No. First day of school.
Got it.
It's in a couple
Yeah.
weeks.
But things
Yeah,
like that, where if
yeah.
we're really gonna do it, why not? If they show up on the first day of school with a "We're All In" T-shirt, and we're really why not? Let's really blast it out on the first day of school, and let's really make a presence.
well,
There you go.
the artwork.
I'm serious. If we're saying we're
Yeah,
gonna live it
sure.
and really mean it,
Sure.
let's not just have it on a piece of paper.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's part of the conversation, but before we were all in, we wanted to make sure we were all in before we go there, because whatever we do, we, as people will tell you, go big or go home around here. So if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it, but we wanna make sure that we vetted it through, that it really captures the essence of who we think people have been describing us to be and who we really wanna be able to say that we are, and that's the unique thing. From a branding, marketing piece of it, you know that everybody has a unique thing, and I do think that that's the unique thing that this community has, is that whatever that is that when you're part of it, you're part of it, and not everybody has that same thing. So that's what we've tried to capture. I think there's a lot of things with it. I don't think it's not meant to be a one-year theme. It's really meant to be something that takes you, and I think the more you sit and think about it, it really can go, because you can take spins on it a lot of different ways, from both with play on word, but also what that means in terms of all of our stakeholders, the community itself, internally, that every student feels that sense of belonging, and meaning that no child gets left outside of what their passions or interests or what skills they might be. So this is your chance to have a discussion and share your thoughts on any of the pieces of it.
It won't hurt my feelings. So.
Well, I like that there's not a lot. It's all pretty, it's very laid out well. I don't know about the hearts and eyeballs and exclamation points and all that stuff, but that's fine with me. But I like it that it's simple and to the point.
And I know, and again, we did a quick whip around last time, but now that you've had a week, we need to make sure that to Jonathan's point, we need to capture it really is who we are and who we want to become, because once we do go with it, it's going to be all over, and then we can't go, oh, that one thing there, I wish we would have changed it, because it's going to be like, what?
So we did have that banner for forever, so.
Okay, well.
I don't know. The clip art thing, I don't know if I'm big on those 4 symbols.
Okay,
I don't know.
okay.
I don't like the eye.
I know you said that, we were trying to find something else but couldn't, so do you have an alternative?
I didn't have a chance to go.
Okay, I looked at it.
That's not my job.
I know, but I just thought if you had something else that didn't do.
I mean, I get the symbols, but yeah, I'm not sure I like them too much. but
Okay.
The thing to me that's missing is falcons.
Maybe instead of these symbols, what if you just put a falcon in front of each?
Or do you have a close-up on a falcon with the
Well,
eye for vision?
Am I a
Sorry.
bystander or can I?
You can.
No, you're
no,
on the
here for-
agenda.
this is it.
You're actually on the agenda.
I kind of like the icons because they alluded to what was going on in each of the categories pretty easily. The value, I think even the compass kind of with the directions there, that wasn't too bad. Maybe the exclamation point is too cliche, but there's a fine line often between cliche and brilliant. So I thought it was a real neat visual. I liked the movement of it. Maybe vision, maybe like eagle eye. Maybe it's like a falcon, or it has to do with maybe that's where the falcon shows up too. But
I'm still, I know it's gonna be more in-depth, still
Yeah.
struggle with the not understanding straight away, we're all in, and vision will, that whole thing, when it's more or less a collective community effort, and you don't see it right away from that.
Yeah, and I think that too, that would be the balance between keeping it simple here and then wanting the elaboration. And I guess that's why I wanted to, like, if your first impact was like, what does that mean? Then it's probably not doing its purpose versus, I think I get what it means, I want to just confirm it. So, and the falcon can be added on here from a visual or however too. This was, one of the things that I think we noticed is that the school district only had an athletic mascot. I said that the same reaction I got when I talked to administrators. Find another, like most school districts, they have their athletic mascot, but they also have an actual school district mascot. New Berlin's got the little star thrower person. I mean, like, go and look one, just, I don't care, grab any other school district. They don't use their athletic mascot as their, like, school district symbol.
I don't know, the
know what
school
you're
I
talking
grew up in
Yeah,
did. We were the
so-
Eagles, everybody was the Eagles.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm
No,
saying that on their
like-
school district's website or their letterhead or whatever, there's a different.
When you
So
look at New
UW
Berlin.
Milwaukee,
Yes.
whatever,
New
like,
Berlin
they
has-
are the Panthers, but they don't use Panthers on everything. They also have their own academic.
Kettle Moraine, they're
Sure.
the lasers, but they don't have a laser
Zap and
on
everything.
everything,
Yeah.
right?
And
They have
Muskego doesn't either.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it gives the essence of why, it gives who they are. They have a global.
B-roll thing with hands up. and
But see,
stuff.
nobody knows anything about that.
This is the first I've heard of this. I mean, I've seen it, I ignore whatever, I've
Right.
seen other districts' web pages, just some sort of
So it's
clip
more
art or
like a
something.
crest.
Yes, like a
Well,
crest.
Sure,
exactly,
yeah, whatever it is.
yes.
And I'm not saying neither here nor there,
Yes.
but, so this is the other extreme without seeing it. So there's no problem with our navy blue outline of the falcon on here, absolutely, to identify it with it. I was looking more at the content, and we're all looking at the graphic part of
Right.
this, so I was looking at, are we okay with the vision and the values and we're on the eyeballs, so.
That was my next question. What is the use of it, or what are you
Is that
using
a
this?
Yeah.
Crimson wave?
So for what it is, the visual's fine for now. I think just whatever the passion, purpose, value, I thought it was pretty clear and
Yes.
simple and easy to understand. I like how it seemed to have a process that it seemed to all tie together. That was a quick look at it.
Yeah, it flows well. I think it's simple enough, the yellow icons notwithstanding, the word standalone, that's what you're looking to augment with everything else. And I think it does it pretty well.
I developed some things for smaller companies that I call them Vistra. And it's kind of a combination, it's a living document that's a combination of a mission statement, a vision statement, and strategic points. So the mission and the vision parts stay the same for years and won't change. And I expect them to be 1 to 2 sentences long at the most. And you've kind of accomplished this as long as we all know it. And then the strategic points would be up to 4 or 5 points that we change every 6 months. We make sure that we kind of establish it. And it's almost a living document like this that sits on people's desks, or I encourage that. And that's what it reminded me of. It seemed not quite the Pledge of Allegiance, but it's right there. And I know you guys worked on this quite a bit.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it can't change. As I said before, we make banners and shirts and whatever, yeah.
So what about for the vision? Because when you go back to the vision without having the whole conversation.
Yeah,
When you go back to the vision and it says we're all in, to me, that doesn't make any sense, just like it did
That's what I've been
the last
saying,
time.
yeah.
So why don't, under the vision, why don't you put the Whitnall we're all in under the vision? You know, how it
Having
is
that, yeah,
down here in the
yeah.
corner? Rather than saying we're all in and nobody knows what that means, put the Whitnall we're all in, and maybe that's a,
Just put the graphic there, you mean? Yep.
yeah.
You're not the only person that suggested that. I can't remember. It's probably somebody in the back table, so they're gonna say, see, like, I don't know. Like, but they did. Somebody did have that suggestion, Nancy, that they don't need the words right there. If you just
Right.
put that image, then the link is a lot
Right.
closer to it. And we can.
And then you can put the falcon down in
Then
there.
He's one of the legs for the falcon. You're right. I mean, it seems duplicative that way, the way that it is. It was just, yeah.
Can anybody recite the purpose or the passion at this point without looking at it?
I didn't try to memorize it, no.
All right.
We just officially approved it like 45 minutes
Oh,
ago.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm not big in the lower left.
Okay.
I don't know, something with the V's and, I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe
It doesn't sit right with my.
and maybe if we move that other graphic up there and put the falcon, then you don't know that it was a graphic
Yeah.
balancer
Balance.
at the time.
Mhm.
But if you put the falcon there and move the other one up there, you probably don't need it then.
Okay.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any other?
But we're
Yeah,
okay
I
with the
don't have a problem
content.
with
Yes.
The symbols, but I don't know if we need them, 4 of them underneath the prospectus.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we all in? Like if we do
So-
go
Did
with
we already
Yeah.
vote, did we already
Yeah.
vote on this?
Yeah, we're
I
going
like
back
we
to
did, it's
content.
the graphical piece of it though, so we're
The
okay
content.
with it.
The content is great.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Perfect. Okay.
I really like the values that goes ABC.
Do you?
Because then that's easy to remember
Yes.
for
It
people.
does, and I'm gonna tell you, I'll credit Jackie with that, and it was not intentional, because we really felt, we liked the word belonging, and we really liked the word courage, because it takes, and we had that word growth in there, but then we had that dilemma, and we're like, oh, we sat and struggled, and it just happened, as we were all thesaurusing our way through the internet, that word came up, and she's like, hey, if you move that up first, guess what, it can be ABC, so. Not trying to be cliche or corny, but it does help you remember the values in that order.
That was brilliant.
Okay, any other thoughts on this? No? Thank you for the help and
Thanks,
all your
Joe.
time. Thanks, Joe. Okay, so what will the next steps of this look like? So you'll make some of these changes, get it emailed out to the board?
Yep, we're gonna be working with our staff as they come back for the August launch and have them take a look at this and do some activities with it and get their feedback on some of the pieces, like what that means to help develop it, the one-pagers that would go with it, and really get their input on it too, to see that they don't just memorize them, but really what does that mean, and internalize it, so as we're trying to live out the values in that, we have a common understanding of what that looks like, so we all can say, well, that's what it means in terms of advancement, or that's what it means to have courage, right? So.
Okay, great. All right, so 7C referendum monthly financials.
Yeah, this is meant to have a long report each time, but just a transparency piece, so not a lot going on yet, a lot of gray architecture on there right now, so.
Okay, great. 8 items for future consideration? Yes.
I'd like to know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at the next meeting, but maybe you could just send an email about what open positions do we have remaining?
Oh.
Sure. Open positions.
Open positions.
And I think that with the last 2 meetings, 2 people coming before us talking about communication, I think we need to have a discussion on communicating with our staff, with not just teachers, but staff. What is it that we're doing good? What is it we're doing bad? What needs improvement? What avenues do staff have to communicate with us and the administration?
How do you see that looking in terms of a discussion? Just a sharing, or
Because
what would
it's
that
all
look
laid
like?
out in the board policies.
Okay, then I would like to know what those board policies are. I mean, what avenues do we have for staff to come forward with communications, whether it's good or bad? I don't need it to be a bitch session or anything like that. I just think that we need to know what's going on.
Sure. So staff or community or all or student, I mean, that's, I just
Staff.
want to know, like, okay,
Staff.
just staff, okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else? Okay, 9 is announcements. Any announcements?
Tomorrow night is the Booster Club thing.
Mhm.
You're all. And
I was gonna say
speaking
soccer
of,
opens tomorrow night.
yeah, well, I was gonna
Yeah,
let
they
you
had a
say
little
it.
soiree.
Next time.
Yeah, would you like me to repeat
You
it?
would,
Could
because
you
I know they're
please?
still
Okay,
drumming up
Maddie's
business,
all-
yeah.
So starting at, I believe it's at 6:30 at Maddie's. It's the Whitnall Falcon Booster Club, kind of like kickoff social event to kind of boost membership and have a social event. And there's food and things to consume there, and it should be fun.
Goes from 6:30 to what?
I believe it's till 8:30, something like that. Yeah.
Pretty sure soccer starts
Boys
tomorrow.
soccer
so
starts tomorrow.
Probably be there, but anyway,
We'll see you there.
all right.
Nancy brings up a good point here, and maybe we could bring it up to the Booster Club board, is why are they doing it outside the district?
We're all in,
New
we should be
Berlin.
in the district,
Should be at the Ale House.
Or Bosch.
or at the beer and
Yeah.
burger place, or at some of our struggling,
George
Highway
Webb's.
100. Yeah, I like that idea.
Well, Webby's for everybody.
I will
It is
bring
something
that
that we
back to
can
them.
bring
Yeah.
up to them.
Yeah, I can bring that back to them.
Yeah, that's good.
And speaking of struggling businesses, since it was mentioned a couple times, the chamber, the Hales Corners Chamber Board in the Village is sponsoring an event on September 22nd, which is a Saturday. More information is coming, but it's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and it's called Highway to Hales, a showcase of Hales Corners businesses. So it's going to be held in the Kmart parking lot. In terms of that, but then they're encouraging businesses to also give coupons and that, so people don't forget about the businesses during road construction. So I'll get you, actually, the marketing firm for the DOT for Highway 100 has volunteered their services to market and create the flyers for the event to be able to do that, because they recognize that many of the businesses up and down are struggling a little bit, so that's gonna be sponsored and that day. So we'll see how the school district can help or participate in that once we get a little bit more detail, so.
All right, any other announcements? Okay, 10, meeting debrief. Anybody have anything? Okay, great. Now take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, have a great evening.
yes, please.